In this video, we'll see Carla Sands, a Trump enthusiast, gush about him in the beginning portion of the interview. But when she's hit with challenging questions, she begins to falter and shows signs of panic, struggling to give fitting answers. As usual, let's watch the whole video, and I'll share my thoughts at the end.
Hey, good morning, Kate. Nice to see you.
Great to have you with us. This isn't the first time that President Trump has talked of extra financial sanctions against Russia. What makes it different this time?
Well, it's the amount, first of all, right? 100% tariffs on energy, Russian energy, if a peace deal isn't done within, I think, 50 days, is a really big deal. It does ratchet up the pressure on Putin. I hope that Putin takes this as a real warning and real consequences. I mean, there are people, it's bipartisan in the US Congress that are actually, or Senate, trying to pass 500% tariffs that, listen, I think that if he can blame it on the US president and Congress, Putin can maybe find an off-ramp, I'm hoping so, to end the killing and just make it stop.
But what do you think is the logic behind only introducing these tariffs in 50 days if there is no progress made, when Donald Trump himself has said President Putin talks a good game, he makes lots of promises, but he always pulls back eventually? What's to stop him doing it again this time?
Well, if he does it, I think there will be real consequences. President Trump knows that we have the greatest military in the world. The war would stop tomorrow if China just stopped funding and aiding Russia in this war. It would end tomorrow. So President Trump, I believe, holds all the cards. It's just a matter of convincing Vladimir Putin of this and the Russian leadership. I think it has to happen. The killing has to stop. It's a tragedy on both sides. It would never have happened with a strong US president in the White House. But this was Joe Biden, pulling out of Afghanistan and the whole world seeing the most disastrous withdrawal in the history of, well, certainly the United States, with the loss of life and the people falling off the airplanes. We saw him say, Nord Stream 2, that Russian gas pipeline, I'm not going to sanction it. So giving Putin another benefit. And then the third thing Vladimir Putin saw was when Joe Biden stood at the podium and said, well, if there's a minor incursion or two into Ukraine, we're going to let it go. And so he basically opened the door and ushered Vladimir Putin into Ukraine. I know that President Trump is the peace president. He's working hard to get to peace. So is his team. But we need other willing partners, and that's going to come down to the Ukraine leadership and the Russian leadership.
I mean, you say Biden opened the door to what's happened in Ukraine, but the reality and the truth of this is that Donald Trump has spent a long time talking to Vladimir Putin, listening to him, giving him the benefit of the doubt, talking him up in some cases in ways that have made other leaders in Western nations feel deeply, deeply uncomfortable. And although he is talking tough now, he's not actually taking any action. Many people say, well, Trump talks a good game, but in the end, he always pulls back, a bit like Putin. I mean, why would anybody believe that these sanctions will ever happen this time around when they haven't happened in the past?
Well, first of all, President Trump is the greatest negotiator as a leader in the world today, but he's also the greatest US president in modern times as a negotiator. So they can say all they these leaders around the world weren't even negotiating with Putin and Zelensky to get to a peace.
But it's not working. It's not working, is it? That's the problem.
Well, it's not working like a snap of the fingers. That is true. But is it actually going to work? Yes, I believe it's going to work. We do not want to get pulled into a war that expands and becomes World War III. We reject American young men and women dying on a battlefield in a war that is not ours. This is Europe's war. Europe should take care of it. President Trump now has an agreement that EU, NATO countries are going to be paying 100% of the cost of things like advanced weapon systems, perhaps HIMARS, although that's what I've heard. I haven't seen it in writing. But there are going to be advanced weapons supplied to the Ukrainian military by the EU allies, but it's going to be EU-based American equipment that they're going to pay for. I guess it's okay as a sort of push, a nudge to Putin to say, look, we're not going to mess around. This is going to end very, very badly for Russia if they don't stop.
Carla Sands' interview really shows the lengths some folks will go to staunchly defend Donald Trump, even when they're hit with hard questions that poke holes in their reasoning. At first, she heaps praise on Trump as a top-notch negotiator and a president of peace, but when you start digging into his policies, that praise starts to fall apart. She claims Trump has sway in dealings with Putin, but that's a tough sell given the ongoing conflicts and failed diplomatic efforts. Sands tries to shift the blame to Joe Biden, alleging that his actions set the stage for Putin's aggressions. Yet this narrative conveniently ignores Trump's own track record with Putin, which hasn't yielded much in the way of solid results. Her arguments start to unravel as she struggles to justify why Trump's promises of peace and effective sanctions haven't materialized. Plus, her repeated claims about Trump's negotiating skills seem less and less convincing against the backdrop of his presidency's lack of significant accomplishments. This inconsistency highlights a bigger issue, the disconnect between Trump's brash promises and the tangible outcomes of his foreign policy moves. Sands' visible discomfort when asked for specifics reveals a deeper truth about her backing of Trump. It often appears more like unyielding loyalty to the man himself rather than a thoughtful endorsement, especially given that his actions don't align with the principles she claims to support. Her struggle to present a solid defense only fuels doubts about Trump's leadership and his handling of international matters. Ultimately, this interview highlights the need for political allegiance to be rooted in accountability and concrete results, not just flashy talk. As we reflect on these discussions, it's crucial to demand fact-based arguments that prioritize the well-being of those affected by these policies. Critically examining such stories is key to fostering a political atmosphere that values honesty and integrity. Let's keep advocating for meaningful conversations that question authority and aim to find real solutions to complex issues.
So do you believe this is a significant moment in the relationship between Donald Trump and President Putin, which, as I said before, has been warm and even cordial at points? Do you think that is now, that there has been a shift and there is a change in the relationship between these two men?
Well, when you have someone that you're negotiating on a deal with, and they keep retrading you, like they say, yeah, the deal's done, they shake your hand, and then they retrade. It is kind of frustrating. It makes it hard to do a deal with that person or that company. I don't like it personally. I'm for sure that Donald Trump doesn't like it. And so, look, Vladimir Putin's done this with a lot of US presidents. But Donald Trump has, Vladimir Putin has met his match in Donald Trump. There will be some good place that we get to. It's just a shame that it's not quicker to end the killing, the loss of life on both sides. That's what I think the American people for sure want to see. And that's bipartisan. They don't want us to get into these forever wars. And like I said earlier, this is Europe's war. Europe now is arming. Europe is becoming stronger, but we need Europe to have a stronger economy as well. So we've got a ways to go. The net zero policy in Europe, but also in the UK, is very concerning. To have a strong economy, you have to have inexpensive and abundant energy. And so as we see the deindustrialization of Europe, we are concerned. We want to see prosperity in the UK and in Europe.
Do you think Trump has had enough? You know him, you know his character. Do you think this is a line in the sand?
I think he's going to get to a deal. I don't know how he'll do it, but he always has a few more cards up his sleeve that he can pull out when needed. Those big sanctions, those will bite. And the pressure on the consumers of Russian gas, that's going to be very, very tough. So that, we'll see at the end of the day where this ends up. But I think we're in the middle of this story. We don't know the ending yet, when it ends and how it ends. And my hope is that we end in peace and an end to the loss of life.
Carla Sands.
Honestly, I feel zero pity for Donald Trump. Even Carla Sands sits around and repeats Trump's nonsense, which I think is all Trump's doing for the backlash he's now dealing with. Remember those big pledges he made during his campaign, like ending the war in 24 hours or in 100 days? Yet, months into his presidency, we haven't seen much progress. Let's be real here. Putin is taking Trump on a wild ride. This just shows how far Trump's words are from reality. Trump always talked up his special relationship with Putin, but the truth paints a different picture. Remember what Kamala Harris said during her campaign? Complimenting Trump is easy, and that's exactly what Putin's been doing for years, fooling Trump into thinking they had a strong connection when they really didn't. If we're being honest, Trump's strategy with Putin hasn't achieved anything, and Putin keeps ignoring Trump's attempts at mediation or peace proposals. It's obvious Putin doesn't take Trump seriously, and Trump seems entirely clueless about it. Yet, somehow Carlo and others keep talking to the American public, heaping endless praise on Trump like he's the best negotiator or president ever. But we haven't really seen any evidence to back that up. At this point, he seems pretty far from being that, especially when he talks about important issues like trials as if they're no big deal. It's pretty strange. And it's not exactly surprising when someone like Carla Sands stands behind Trump, even when defending him seems out of the question. You can clearly see she doesn't fully stand by her own words, especially when she pauses or struggles when questioned. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave your comments below. I'm always keen to learn about your views, ideas, and feedback. Thank you so much. While you're at it, could you do me a small favor? Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, and stay tuned for more updates. A special thank you goes to Times Radio and the channel Just a Confused Brit for the footage featured in this video. I appreciate all of you and look forward to seeing you in the next one.